Hello, listeners. Welcome to the Science of Self on March 8th, 2024, where you improve your life from the inside out. Today's episode dives into the power of yes or no questions, inspired by Peter Holland's book, Super Brain. We all struggle with self-discipline, but what if the answer lies in a series of simple questions? Join us as we explore how saying yes or no to yourself can be the key to unlocking your full potential.
To build self-discipline, one needs to self-monitor. At some point, you need to be able to know that what you're doing is wrong. This moment of realization will probably after the fact, but you might even catch yourself in the middle of it from time to time. All the self-discipline in the world isn't useful if you don't know when you need to exercise it, either in the present moment or in the future. Unfortunately, most types of self-analysis are completely foreign to us. It runs counter to how we're wired because it involves stepping outside of our self-interested tendencies. Thus, it is not a skill we practice, and this leads us to often being unable to explain why we do what we do. We react, and then the conscious thought comes after, if at all. Frankly, we walk around day to day with such a lack of self-awareness that we can barely recite the steps of our work commute. As bothersome and painful as self-analysis is, flat-out ignoring or not knowing yourself is not an acceptable alternative. You're not going to get far with willful ignorance or lack of perspective. You will have to be tough on yourself and ask yourself some hard questions. That's what this chapter is about. It contains questions you can ask yourself whenever you come to a stopping point or a fork in the road in your progress, especially if you sense you might give up and drift off into idleness, sloth, or undisciplined thinking. You can and should ask yourself these questions whenever you have time to do a mental check-in. There is, however, one very important facet about these questions. Your answers to most of them, no matter what the situation at the time you ask, must be either yes or no. No gray areas, no but, no it depends, and no I don't know. Just yes or no. No explanation allowed. One word answers only. It may sound like I'm encouraging you to set up a false dichotomy, a situation where you're forced into choosing one of only two acceptable answers, when in reality the situation may be much more complex. This might put you in a conundrum when you can't clearly answer yes or no, but you're right. That's exactly what I'm doing, and here's why. First, a drawn-out answer can get in the way of executing action or change. Giving a complex answer to any of these questions could lead you down a rabbit hole of overthinking, which will likely delay action on your part. This is otherwise known as analysis paralysis. This is also a slippery slope to creating excuses which we already know are no good. Second, and more importantly, just answering yes or no to these questions, all of which I'm sure can be answered more deeply and thoroughly, forces you to state a harsh truth about yourself or know that you need to take action. When you have no option to equivocate, justify, or over-explain, you're forced to make a sharp, clear judgment on yourself. If you're over 50% at any point toward yes or no, that's your answer. Your justifications, defenses, or explanations about why you're doing or not doing it don't matter. Either you're doing something or you're not. And most of the time when you're forced to answer like this, you're not going to like what you find. This pushes you to act. Were you late to baseball practice? Well, there was so much traffic, and you guys didn't start on time anyway. That might be true, but that's not the question that was asked. Instead, this answer provides no information and displays a similar amount of self-awareness. This person doesn't think they're the type to be late to baseball practice. Yes. Now you've reached a harsh truth. You can either choose to accept that your actions define you, or you can exercise better discipline in the future to change this answer. This ends up being an important piece of the puzzle with the yes-no questions we use. The entire crux of self-discipline is that you're doing what you need to do, despite wanting to give up and despite pain and discomfort. Thus, it's only appropriate that you stop the habit of justifications and equivocations and simply get things done, no matter how valid those excuses might be. That's why you bought this book, after all. You can discuss all the mitigating factors, roadblocks, issues, or complications when you're in the post-mortem phase, when your projects are done and submitted. Do first, and stop talking in circles. With that, let's dive in. When you feel you're at a crossroads or a stopping point in getting to where you want to be, the questions you need to ask are as follows. It might help to jot them on a note card somewhere or even carry them with you as a sort of self-discipline compass whenever needed. 1. Will this course of action create a gap between my ideal self and my non-desired self? You want the answer here to be no, and you should do everything possible to not answer yes. Your ideal self is the one who possesses the self-discipline of a Shaolin monk on steroids. Let's say you're striving to be more productive at work. You fear that a lot of your colleagues have no idea why you're at work. You're nice enough, but they can't name one thing that you've done to make yourself indispensable. You become aware of this possibility and it frightens you. You start to see yourself that way. The thing is, you don't feel like yourself at work. You're riddled with anxiety and never really feel like the people know who you are. You don't have this issue in your social life. In fact, when explaining it to others, you give yourself an alter ego to show how you're almost a different person entirely when you're at the office. It's called Rain. Rain is easily distracted. They spend a lot of time online at work, not always in work-related pursuits. They don't have a huge attention span at meetings. They do exactly the minimum required to not get fired. But given enough time, Rain's lack of ambition and effort will make them redundant or expendable. But the person who you want to be is named, somewhat audaciously, Steel. Steel is constantly assured. They never lack confidence. They know everything that goes on in their work. They don't have a lot of time for distraction. If there's a moment Steel's not working, they're probably doing research on a future project or idea. They're optimistic and charming. They have a lot of answers, though they'll say, "I don't have all the answers," without sounding desperate. And of course, their work ethic is second to none, and they have the self-discipline of a Buddhist monk on a 3-month silent retreat. Your conflict here is between the idea of your ideal self, Steel, the kind of person who reflects your highest values, standards, and capabilities, and your undesired self, Rain, the role you might indulge in sometimes but strive to avoid as much as possible. Will your actions bring you closer to Steel or Rain? Will you move further away from your ideal, or will you go closer to achieving it? Again, this is a yes or no question. There may be a slight gap, but down the line it might be worth it. Or, well, you see, this time is different because are not acceptable answers. Yes, the gap is bigger, or no, the gap is not bigger are your only choices. This question is important to ask because it raises the absolutely frightening possibility that you're not the type of person you want to be and that your identity is at risk. It raises the possibility that you are lying to yourself. It creates a conflict between your words and your actions. It gives direct consequences to your actions by linking you to either Steel or Rain. Thus, you're pushed to protect your self-worth and image. The verbal realization of, yes, I'm not who I want to be, am supposed to be, or pride myself on being, just might shake you into action to do something about it. It should inspire you to make the first efforts to instill the discipline that will get you toward your ideal self. This question tends to feel a little confrontational, so here's an alternative phrasing. Does this course of action get me closer to my goal? Some people are simply more goal-oriented than identity-driven. It's easier for them to measure their progress by the attainment of milestones or targets rather than in terms of self-worth. In the end, this version of the yes-no question also links direct consequences to your actions. No matter which iteration of the question you ask yourself, it should make you consider cold reality. Are you truly acting in your own best interests and bringing yourself closer to your ideal? Or are you working against your belief? If you come to the conclusion that you're not serving your self-interest, then what exactly are you getting out of this deal? Will it be worth the sacrifice? At least gain self-awareness that you are making a trade-off. 2. Does this action truly represent my intentions? Hopefully, you answer yes, because self-discipline is reflected only when actions and intentions match. If not, what are your actions actually working toward? Let's say you have a goal of writing a novel. You think about it a lot. When you're working your day job, chipping away at another responsibility you need to look after, you're still imagining yourself as a published author, or at least somebody who's written a complete book. You're planning characters and plot points in your head, and seemingly dreaming about your work all the time. When you get free time after work or on the weekends, you're doing a lot to unwind, hitting the coffee shop, taking long walks, meeting friends for lunch, spending time online, hitting the bars at night, basic distractions. You might be talking about your book to friends who at least appear to be interested. The one thing you're not doing, though, is actually working on the book. You're not committing anything to writing. You've got an empty file folder on your desktop, waiting to be filled with sketches, ideas, and text, but there's nothing in it. You're not doing anything wrong, necessarily, but are your actions actually accomplishing what you want? Are you actively working toward finishing that novel and trying to get on the road to be a full-time writer? That's the next line of interrogation for you. Are your activities in alignment with your intentions? Is what you mentally desire being translated into action? Are you doing what you need to be doing, or are you merely paying it lip service? Even worse, has your attention drifted away from your best intentions, leading you to act without a goal at all? The easiest example of this would be sending work emails on your phone but getting sidetracked by social media. You probably don't have any problem imagining or even meditating on your desires. You may have a very clear picture in your head as to what you want to be. But unless you're actually gearing your efforts toward fulfilling that goal, those thoughts and intentions don't mean a thing. You won't get credit, acclaim, or congratulations for thinking a good game. You get them for doing something. You can have very articulated, very clear visions for what you want to be, but if what you're doing isn't directly contributing to those intentions, you're not getting anywhere. Intentions don't pay the bills. For instance, don't pat yourself on the back for thinking about bringing your significant other a present. This won't be very convincing to them. The answer to this question has ramifications outside the attainment of your goals. It also strikes to the heart of your character. Someone who talks a good game but can't match it with definitive actions could be considered undependable or untrustworthy. Your reputation hinges on what you're actually able to accomplish. Not being able to match your emotions with actual work is a sign of mental frailty, no matter how complete your idea might be in your head. Anyone can talk like a writer, and it might be good for a lively evening of interesting discussion. But that completely evaporates when the conversation's over if you don't actually work on the novel. Words and evocative speech ultimately don't mean anything. Action does. That's why this question is important. And like the first question, it might be more helpful if your answer is no, again, without any conditions, explanations, footnotes, or excuses. Just no. Hopefully, the cold shock of that no will spur you to put your intentions into actions. This question could be asked about almost any aspect of your life. Am I being a responsible parent and keeping my behavior in line with what I tell my kids? Am I working hard enough to reach my goal of learning a new language? Am I really working hard enough at being the best pool player in the Western Hemisphere, or do I need to spend more time practicing my bank shots? Any kind of ambition or goal that you have in mind, no matter how personal or public, is easily addressed by asking yourself if your actions are meeting your intentions. Yes or no. That's almost always enough to get you moving in the right direction. If not, It'll be because of your intentions themselves, not how self-disciplined you are. 3. Am I merely uncomfortable? Is your reason for not wanting to exercise self-discipline related only to mere discomfort and nothing actually harmful? You want to answer no here, otherwise you're admitting that you melt faster than an ice cube in summer. Consequently, you may realize how much you disempower yourself. Let's talk about going to the neighborhood gym. Almost anybody who's in decent physical shape, it stands to reason, has probably conquered most of their self-consciousness about working out in public and has no problem sweating it out in the presence of strangers. For those who aren't top physical specimens, the story can be quite different. Exercising can make them uncomfortable for a myriad of reasons. From the moment they get on a treadmill, they may feel like they're being watched and judged. If they try to do an arm curl, they may feel embarrassed or timid in the presence of someone who's obviously done thousands of them. If they're trying to work off the paunch around their stomach, they may feel that other people are watching and appraising them harshly. This is, of course, ignoring the muscular fatigue and soreness that can follow. Thus, for someone who is debating going to the gym, is mere discomfort holding them back, or is it the prospect of real harm? That's the crux of the third yes or no question. Do I not want to do this just because it makes me feel uncomfortable, or is this actually having a negative, harmful effect on me? I'm willing to bet that 99 times out of 100, the answer is yes, it's merely uncomfortable. You're being pushed out of your comfort zone. You will suffer a bit mentally. Your body will grow sweaty and fatigued. Your brain will be exercised to its full capacity. You may experience some negative emotions, such as stress and anxiety. You will recover just fine without lasting repercussions. This is all discomfort. And then nothing. So are you the type of person to pack it in just because you're uncomfortable? Feel free to slide down the slippery slope of what kind of person that might make you. Your worst-case scenarios and wild justifications are just providing a flimsy reason to avoid discomfort. In fact, they're nothing more than mental illusions. This question forces you to face the shame that you're easily stopped by discomfort. Discomfort has and never will be a legitimate reason to not exercise self-discipline, and thus, this shame should propel you into action. This is a question where the yes-no dichotomy is particularly effective. Every single thing we do to better ourselves, to effect positive change in our lives, is going to involve some measure of inconvenience, discomfort, or fatigue, at least in the beginning. It might even involve minor pain, especially if you're working out for the first time. But are any of those consequences inherently harmful? No, they're not. There are 1,000 cliches that reflect that truth, like no pain, no gain. Effecting real change in your life is going to involve a measure of discomfort. I can't think of any kind of emotional, physical, spiritual, or occupational change that doesn't entail some irritation, soreness, inconvenience, or bother. If they didn't, everybody would do it. Think about this question with everything you do that's causing you some measure of discomfort. You have the choice to be lazy and weak-spirited or get into action. 4. What would I do if I had no choice but to exercise self-discipline? We'll break from the theme of the chapter here for a moment, as this isn't a yes-no question. Sorry, I couldn't resist. Still, keep the answer short and sweet and rooted in reality without rationalizations. If there was a gun pointed at your head, what would happen if you were forced to exercise self-discipline? You might be forced to admit that absolutely nothing bad would happen, and in fact, you'd be better positioned than before. Similar to the last question, you may experience discomfort, but you'd get through it and persevere. Let's go back to the gym. You've been working out for an hour. You just received a phone call that if your heartbeat drops below a certain rate, your entire family will die. So, you jump on the treadmill and try to hold on for dear life. Nothing feels comfortable at this point, as you have fatigue, self-consciousness, revulsion at your own body odor, sweat marks everywhere, the whole 9 yards. Your lungs are burning and your mouth is dry. Miraculously, this criminal is caught after an hour. Besides those discomforts, what awful consequences have come as a result of your being forced to work out? None. The point is to understand that the worst-case scenarios we dream up will never occur. The benefits of your efforts are going to be real, and the price you have to pay to get them in the end won't be much at all. You might not even remember the pain or discomfort later. If you do, you'll probably firmly believe it was worth all the pain to get where you wanted to go. When you force yourself into something, you have nothing to lose but everything to gain. When you try to summon up the will to exercise self-discipline, picture yourself as having no plan B whatsoever. Don't look for shortcuts, don't search for less taxing or exhausting schemes, and don't try to negotiate with yourself. Again, gun to your head, you'd sigh, groan a bit, and then set to your task without any other consequences. Imaginary crisis averted. Hopefully, it will make you understand how your fleeting impulses of annoyance or minor discomfort can derail you from your plans and how they shouldn't. The satisfaction you receive from your positive consequences will be more than enough to strike those small peeves from your memory. 5. Is "I don't want to" a good enough excuse to not do something? You already know the answer to this question, no. And hopefully, the way it's phrased makes you realize that "I don't want to" is a bit of an entitled and lazy thing to say. And you don't want to be entitled and lazy, do you? No matter how you dress it up or rationalize it, most of the time, we just don't want to exercise discipline because we don't want to. We can play devil's advocate first to bring some context to this question. Why should you do something you really don't want to do? Life is a complicated enough affair as it is. Why weigh it down even more with something that you just don't want to experience or put effort towards things that make you miserable to any degree, even if they will result in positive consequences? What's the difference? Don't you have free will? What about living for carpe diem and truly living life because you're only young once? Those are all true. But now imagine people who do not have your range of options. Some people have to do things that nobody else wants to do to make ends meet. They work menial or strenuous jobs or work multiple jobs because they absolutely have to. Some of them have to take care of entire families, which might restrict them from things they really want to do. In fact, they may be so busy or preoccupied that they don't have time to even think about what they really want to do. They have no time for anything except working, eating, and sleeping. They indeed have the proverbial gun to their head from the previous question. And then they have to do that every day of the week. Some of them may be perfectly content with this. Maybe they find meaning in what they do, and that's enough for them. That is respectable. You, however, by virtue of being able to hem and haw and procrastinate, are in a position of privilege to have the choices they don't. The chores and tasks you have to endure to get to the goal you want to reach are opportunities they do not have. They'd love to have the time to learn a foreign language, develop a knowledgeable appreciation for art, or spend time learning to communicate with their loved ones. They'd also love the choice to not do something they need to do. They just don't have the ability or time. You do. And not to be mean, but hey, let's be honest. If a longshoreman heard you complaining about the leg cramps you got while doing sit-ups, he might think you're being a little, well, ridiculous. He has no choice but to wake up at 5 a.m. each day and work until 8 p.m. How's that for a bit of perspective? Surely you can push a bit harder in the gym. Surely you can make the bed every morning. Surely that darned car can finally get washed. The answer to this question, then, is hopefully no. It's not a good excuse for anything. Everybody does something they don't want to do from time to time, but some people don't have the opportunity to do anything else. Turn that realization into a sense of gratitude that you can do it. That's not just the right way to be either. It will give you a positive outlook, because it's impossible to feel gratitude and negativity at the same time. Spend some time thinking about people who have to do those arduous or dreadful jobs every day of their lives. Write them down in a list if you have to. Then put yourself in proper perspective about the pesky discomforts or chores you have to do to get to your goal. Your being able to do those annoying things is actually a great freedom. These things you want to avoid are only drudgery if you choose to see them that way. Coming at a task from a mindset of gratitude versus dread will create vastly different outcomes. In the grand scheme of things, you're not asking all that much of yourself, and the end result will be far more worthy of your mental energy than what you spend to complain about them. 6. Am I doing the right thing or the easy thing? Sorry, another deviation from the theme of the chapter, yet it's still a helpful question to bring clarity to what you're trying to accomplish at the moment or in the future. Going to the gym would be the right thing, while the easy thing would be staying at home. The easy thing would also be researching healthy recipes online or anything else you do to slightly ease your guilt. Unfortunately, doing the right thing usually means doing the hard thing. Actually, they're almost always the exact same thing. The average person doesn't typically choose things that are difficult when there is an alternative, which is why self-discipline is often the missing component for many people who don't fulfill their goals. People drift toward the path of least resistance, consciously or not. If you don't want that to be you, you'll need to be able to consciously answer whether you are doing that or doing what's right. When you can't confidently say that you're doing the right thing, you're not. And then you're forced to compare the difference between right and easy. If you're not doing what you should be, then anything else out of your mouth is an excuse, plain and simple. Instead of beating around the bush and soothing your ego, it would actually be better to start being honest and upfront with yourself about your behavior. Categorize your actions into right or easy. Running to lose weight, right thing. Skipping a workout, easy thing. Cutting workout short, easy thing. Instead of rationalizing skipping a run because it's too hot outside or it's too late, you'd just start saying, I'm not going to run today because I'm too soft and lazy to maintain discipline. In reality, why are you skipping the run? Because you're lazy. You know the right thing to do is run. Therefore, you're taking the easy way out. In effect, you become brutally honest and confrontational with yourself, which is sometimes the only way to get a message across. You should always want to answer that you're doing what's right, and that will frequently mean that you have to make a little extra effort. But when you do it consistently, that extra effort pays off. For example, you might have the opportunity to cheat while taking an exam. Knowing that they wouldn't be caught, the typical student probably takes that opportunity to cheat and runs with it. But then the final exam comes around, and now the test-taking environment is much more closely monitored, to the point that cheating would be risky or even impossible. The students who didn't cheat on previous exams and relied on their own studying will have actually learned the material throughout the semester and given themselves a good shot at success, while the students who cheated their way through the entire semester won't know anything on the final exam. Reaching your goals isn't all that different from succeeding on that final exam. Sure, you might find little successes from shortcuts, from rationalizations along the way, but eventually it catches up to you and you'll find you don't have what it takes. Doing the right thing may feel like the harder route in the moment, but when you do it consistently, it winds up being the most efficient route to accomplishing your goals.
Is there a real obstacle to my goal that can't be overcome? Think of this question as an excuse buster. An excuse is something that appears on the surface to be quite rational, but in reality is nothing more than an attempt to wriggle out of something that is difficult or uncomfortable, or even just something that takes you slightly out of your comfort zone. Look, obviously, on occasion, there really will be a good reason for you not to do your workout that day. Both of your arms have suddenly fallen off, but usually there's a workaround no matter what. Well, it looks like it's leg day then. The truth is that most of the reasons we give ourselves for not doing something are bogus, and deep down we know it. What is really the obstacle? Think about it. A person who truly doesn't want to do something won't do it, no matter how easy it is for them. They'll dream up any number of excuses to say why they can't. And a person who truly does want to do something cannot be dissuaded, i.e., no matter what obstacles emerge, they do what they want to do. What this means is that it's not even really about the obstacles at all. It's about our will, intention, and self-discipline. If you catch yourself telling yourself a nice little story about why you couldn't possibly do the thing you said you were going to do, stop. Take a close look at what's going on and ask, is there really an obstacle in the way here? Or is my attitude the obstacle? Another way to look at it, there may be obstacles, sure, but then again, there always are. There are so many obstacles in life, you may as well say there are none, because to have something standing in your way is pretty much the norm. It'll always be something. The weather, money, other people being idiots, tiredness, work, you name it. If not one thing, then the other. But are those obstacles that cannot be overcome? Probably not. Either you can, A, acknowledge that you're just making excuses and refuse to believe them, or B, you can take the obstacle at face value, but refuse to let it mean anything, i.e., sure, it's going to be tricky, but so what? You'll just find another way. If we're honest, the answer to this question is almost always nope. What is the outcome of this action if I continue along this path? The easy, tempting, distracting thing is right here in front of you, promising instant gratification. Indulging conceals its true cost, though, which only kicks in later down the line in the future. Is your present self engaging in behavior that's screwing over your future self? In other words, are you doing things that your future self will regret? The idea behind this question is to activate long-term thinking and downplay our tendency to focus only on the immediate rewards of an action in the present. Here are two options. Option A, pleasure and ease. Option B, turning down pleasure and ease. The choice is an easy one, right? You go with A. Life is hard. Why not make the best of it? Take the afternoon off for no reason. Have a treat, or do a sloppy job on a task to just get it done. But look at this set of options. Option A, pleasure and ease, followed by guilt and shame at 10 minutes, then regret at 10 days, a deep sense of disappointment in yourself, 10 weeks, and then the feeling that your dreams have passed you by and it's too late to do anything now, 10 months or years. Option B, turning down pleasure and ease, followed by nothing in particular, 10 minutes, but then a little pride at having strength to be self-disciplined, 10 days, a stronger sense of focus, 10 weeks, and the completion of your dream goal, 10 months or years. Which seems like the better choice now? They are, of course, both the same options in each case, only the second pair truly accounts for consequences of your actions and takes a long-term view. The trouble is that all the less beneficial actions seem to have rewards that play out instantly with a bill that comes later, whereas the better choices take time for their benefits to show. If we aren't patient, focused, and diligent, we will always pick option A, but still pay for it later. The old adage, act in haste, repent at leisure, captures this idea somewhat. Actions mature. Sometimes results only fully appear long after their instigating action. By asking the above question, though, you're correcting this bias for rewards in the present and doing a full accounting of what an action really costs you. Don't choose something simply according to the benefits you perceive in the moment. When you choose something, you're also choosing the consequences of that thing, even consequences that play out over decades. You're choosing what happens over the next minutes, days, years, and months. Also, if you did this action, what other actions would it make easier and more probable in the future? And are those what you really want? In other words, the more choose pleasure and ease, the easier it is to keep choosing it. The next time you're faced with something that threatens to derail your disciplined action, ask what indulging looks like down the line. Look at possible outcomes and consequences. Ask what happens in 10 minutes, 10 days, 10 weeks, 10 years. Hey, there's a chance that acting now has few, if any, consequences, and it's best to seize the day and have a good time, but at least choose that option with open eyes.
Takeaways. Yes or no? Just a simple answer, please, with no BS. This chapter is all about self-interrogation and digging into your excuses and rationalizations to avoid exercising self-discipline. What follows is typically self-awareness at how casually you view avoiding work. There are 6 questions to bring clarity. Most are indeed yes or no questions to force you to either admit a harsh truth or take action. Will this course of action create a gap between my ideal self and my non-desired self? Alternatively, does this action take me closer or farther from my goals? Does this action truly represent my intentions? If not, then what the heck am I doing? Am I merely uncomfortable? Am I letting mere discomfort keep me from my goals? Am I so mentally weak? What would I do if I had no choice but to exercise self-discipline? Certainly not the worst-case scenario. Is "I don't want to" a good enough excuse to not do something? You may have the ability to use this excuse, but what about those who are never able to take a break and have to act every single time? It's difficult to feel gratitude and lack self-discipline at the same time. Am I doing the right thing or the easy thing? There's usually only one path to what you want, and it's not typically an easy one.
Is there a real obstacle to my goal that I can't overcome? This focuses you on the fact that most of the time, the so-called obstacle is not the problem, but our attitude is. If we wanted to do it, no obstacle would stop us. And if we didn't want to do it, we wouldn't, even if there were 0 obstacles. What is the outcome of this action if I continue along this path? Switch your focus away from instant gratification and see how a decision plays out over time, from 10 minutes to 10 years into the future. When you choose something, you're also choosing the consequence of that thing, even if those consequences don't kick in for a while. Thanks for joining us on The Science of Self, where you improve your life from the inside out. Remember, the power to change lies within you. Visit Peter Holland's website at bit.ly/Peter Hollins for more insights on maximizing your potential. We'll see you next Friday.